basically.
Okay, we'll continue on here. What was I going to say?
You're talking about why the Masoretic text.
Oh, yeah. On the historical level, okay. In 1946 and thereabouts, the Dead Sea Scrolls were, they were covered and all and everything. And they made a lot of changes. Some scholars made a lot of changes in the Hebrew Bible based upon what they saw in the Exegesis stuff they found and some other stuff, right? And so they made a lot of changes, thinking that the Hebrew text, which is our Hebrew text, is a text that was produced for us in I forget the exact number, but 900 and some 10th century A.D. Right, and it's the earliest text that we got. How can that 10th century A.D. text be accurate? And these things that we discover go back way into the, sometimes into the intertestamental period, right? They've got to be more accurate. And so they started making all these changes and everything. But then they began to analyze the Hebrew text that they found and compare that. And they were absolutely almost shocked, the scholars were, of the accuracy of a 10th century A.D. text when you compare it from 1,000 years earlier text. And so the whole attitude switched, changed. And that's why they're saying, look, we give preference to the Masoretic text, everything else being equal. Because of the great care that was taken that was dealt with by the scribes, the Masoretes, and others. Over these 1,000 years, so actually more.
And when did the Masoretics compile and really move?
They really are the ones who put in, their concern was this. Their concern was that the Hebrew people were forgetting how to accurately pronounce their words, their Bible. Okay. Because why? Because there's no vowels there.
Sure.
Okay, just to see. So it's easy to see where if you put a different vowel in, you got a different word, right? Okay. So they decided their concern was to finalize the reading of the text. So they created these, others have done it earlier, that is created vowel symbols. They produce these particular symbols to standardize the pronunciation and therefore give an interpretation, right? And preserve, that would be their big thing. Preserve the interpretation, the traditional interpretation of the text by putting in vowels and requiring these words to have particular, forms. Pronunciation thereby, nouns or verbs or whatever it is. And they also created those accents. Okay, put those in there, which also tends to preserve the reading of the text. Because you get a disjunctive accent and you have a little bit of a break. If you have a conjunctive accent, you're putting words together. That's what I said before with the Munana. You remember that? Yesterday we had that. I said, but very often it'll be an indicator that this is a construct relationship, meaning tying these words together. Very often. So those are some of the historical reasons.
And when was that?
10th century. Well, they were working, of course, earlier up to our manuscript is intended to be a 10th century manuscript.
And will we learn more about what they were using to compile this?
Yeah. You can read that in Word 1. Yeah. But there were manuscripts. The thing is, see, when the Hebrews would rewrite a manuscript, they would destroy the old one. You see what I'm saying? It's just worn out and stuff. It's sort of kind of like what we do with flags. We got a bad flag, got tears in it. What do we do with it? Put it in a box, put it in the basement? No, we burn it. We're supposed to burn it. Right? Destroy it so it doesn't happen. Same thing happened with manuscripts. Okay, you get rid of them, burn them. And that is a sign of respect, not of wanton destruction. Okay. In our day and age, we say we wish they would have saved them all. That way we would have a better track record like we have in the New Testament, in a sense. But the amazing thing is how accurate it is compared to 1,000 years earlier. It's amazing. So at any rate, finally, in the Masoretic text, that is, there are differences in the readings between the variants, the different witnesses. And the Masoretic text has doubtful or impossible readings, but the other witnesses have one that work, right? Then we have to choose one that works. Okay? In that case, you don't choose the most difficult, because if it doesn't make any sense, you don't choose the one that makes no sense. You have to choose the one that makes some sense. Why? Well, basically, the Bible was written to be understood, not written to be confusing. They want it to be understood, right? And when everything else fails, then the Masoretic texts don't make any sense. The other witnesses don't make any sense. You have to use a conjecture. You have to guess, if you will. Educated guess, but you get to guess at it. Okay? But that doesn't happen very often. Okay? It shouldn't have to happen often at all. Some places it will, and there will be a note in the text that shows you that this is conjecture. Okay? So those are the basic rules, and then what we will do, there's a couple of things here. I'll just mention these things here. But then we'll take a break, and then we'll look at root and work our book and show you how to actually work the whole thing out. Critiquing the text, Isaiah 52:15. It's either translated, so shall he sprinkle many nations, or startle many nations. What is it? What's the right? So here's what we just read. One current canon is give precedence to the Masoretic text when all manuscripts support the reading makes sense, or the alternative good reading can be explained otherwise as secondary. Okay? And so this canon supports the word in the numeric idea. Sprinkle, the alternative is to startle or marvel. Can be explained by presence of a related idea in verse 14. And notice what's happening here. So we work through the various canons of criticism, but then ultimately you got to put it in context, don't you? You can't just ignore context here. Okay, it's not looking at the textual problem in isolation. So there's a presence of a related idea in verse 14, a possible misunderstanding of an underlying theological concept behind the term sprinkle. Could be a theological issue there. And the following context of the king's amazement of this messianic figure seems to relate. But anyway, Hebrew sprinkle has to make good contextual sense. So Martin, in his commentary, says sprinkle is associated with cleansing by the priest under the Mosaic law. The kings of one day realize the messianic servant's role in cleansing from sin will be appalled and dumbstruck and finally atoning work of Isaiah 53 presaged in the term sprinkle. One way to deal with it, and work both on external evidence, internal evidence, contextual evidence, and some theological questions. Okay? So that's just one example. We'll look at the book of Ruth in our example. And by the way, just to remind you of something we've had before, and that's this. You don't have it, because I don't even know what the book came from anymore. But remember how good, what is the Septuagintal, how much value is that for our work? Well, this article that I had mentioned the other day, well, it's good in some books, not good in other books. Some books you actually need it because the Hebrew's in bad shape. Samuel's, not bad, but more difficult. So Hebrew Greek text is very important. And other places it's kind of a medium value. So just keep that in mind. Just don't jump to the Septuagint and say this has got to be right. Okay. Well, what we will do is do this. back from a break, we will look at all of this, look at Ruth, and we'll learn what all this strange stuff is up here, and how to understand it, and then we will learn how to read all of this, and then after that, we'll be able to make a determination as to the proper text. Okay. So let's take a break. First off, we want to just kind of review what we got here. You got the book, right?
Yeah, I got it. I'm going to go get my water bottle real quick.
All right. 5 seconds. Browse through the book before we get the work at hand. You'll know as you look through your Hebrew Bible, you see all kinds of strange things. Okay, not just the letters involved. I mean, other strange things, like for instance the pay that's stuck out there. Praise God, and the the stomach that is stuck between the lines somewhere. And wondering what is all these kind of things. That's just some of the strange things that you can see right off. Well, the book is going to explain those strange things that we encounter here. One is the sod pasuk. That's not difficult. That's the end of the verse where you got the so-called period, so to speak, similar to a period, right? End of the verse, but it may not be really, if we think of a period as the end of a sentence, starting a sentence, it may not be the end of a sentence, but it's the end of a verse. Okay? But so that's pretty evident. That's not a big deal. Then you got this pay and this stomach here. Well, what in the world is that? Well, that's got to do with paragraph markings. One is called the open paragraph, okay, and the other one is called the closed paragraph. That just has to do with the level of break between the various sections. Okay, probably more often than not, it probably had to do with liturgical issues than anything else. Now, your manuscripts, your primary manuscripts, your ancient manuscripts and stuff, they're not going to show those kind of things in there. Okay. Notice the number C. It says the Seder there. The sign divided the Hebrew Bible into 452 lessons. And that's the one in the margin. That's the Seder in the margin over here. See what I'm saying? See it. The psalmic and the pay, that's inside. Here's the psalmic and here's the pay for paragraph markings. But that's one over here in the side. That there is the one that you just call the Seder there. Okay? Divided into various lessons. And then you've got in the Pentateuch, on the next page, it's got the Parashah, actually, dividing the Pentateuch into 54 lessons. Okay. And you'll find that. For instance, I'm on page 32, and I find that one of those right here on page 32, in the margin, see? Parish. Okay. You know what I'm saying? So those are what those are, and they shouldn't cause us any great stress when we encounter those. Okay? Probably the more weird things are the things that are in the text themselves that we encounter, and that's what the next chapter is all about. Unusual letters and special points and stuff. Okay? The puncta, here's Latin here, of course, puncta extraordinaria, special points. Okay. Those where you get the dot over the letter. So let's just look up Genesis 16:5 just to figure out what they're talking about. Okay. Genesis 16:5. 16 verse 5. Verse 5. Verse 5. Okay, let's see, where is that? Genesis 16:5. Let's see, where is the special mark?
Is it above the trough on the cake on?
Oh, that's that's not it.
This third line from the bottom on the far left, it looks like there's a sugar 100 above the...
No, that's an accent mark. It's a repeated accent. I'm not sure what they're talking about on this one. Oh, I know what it is. It's in the middle of the line. I like we got the 3 dots, look like a triangle, stuck above and to the left of the letter. That's it. So you find some of those, see, there's some of them are a little more dramatic than others. Let's see. And see if 18.9 is a little more dramatic than that. 18.9, yeah, you see 18.9, there's a good example. The second word in. See all those dots on top of that? See, Eli, see those dots?
Little triangle, the diamond looking dots?
Yeah, right. One on each letter, one over each letter. Okay, so those are special points, and it says about these probably indicates doctrinal or textual reservation by the scribes. No, we're not exactly sure what they are. Okay, but the point is that this statement that should bother us at this point. Okay, right. Let's look at the unusual letters, like the inverted noon. That's something that's pretty strange. Inverted noon. Let's look up the Numbers 10:34 example. Let's see, 10:34. 10:34. Okay. At the very end of 10:34, you got this inverted noon, the dollar, right? Okay. Scholars believe that this sign was used to express doubt as to the correct sequence of the text. Okay. So there's some questions. So the commentaries, when you bump into those kind of things, then the thing to do at this stage is to look at commentary, critical commentary, and see how they handle that. Because it's all, they're not sure. This probably indicates, this may indicate, critical commentary is especially. Then there's large letters, and probably, as they say right in the middle of there, Deuteronomy 10:4 is probably the most famous one, or 6:4. Deuteronomy 6:4, the great Shema passage, begins with a large sheen. All right, ayin, there's a large ayin and a large dalet at the end of the verse. It's on page 297. I'm not exactly sure what that is either. It says probably to call attention. See that large ayin and a large dalet? Some have suggested that maybe the word aid, well, in fact, he says that here, aid, meaning witness or testimony. Some suggest that, again, it's a probability suggestion. We're not exactly certain at this point. Okay. Small letters, same kind of thing. One by the book goes up. I'm not sure about all that. Raised letters. 4 letters in the Bible are written above the normal line. Here, not always, obviously, but they're written above there. Okay. And then it says, most likely intended by the scribes to change, in this one instance, Moses to Manasseh. Okay. Change the name. So to avoid mentioning Moses in connection with the descendants of his who became idol priests, a theological kind of thing there, probably.
Try to preserve Moses' honor.
Right. Yeah, right, yeah.
Wow.
So those are what I'm simply pointing out is this little book will help you work through those. We're not going to walk through all of those. That's part of the book, first part of the book. The 3, that is lesson number 3 here, Masorah. That's on the side margins is a small Masorah. And then below is a large Masorah. That is the first. And the first set of footnotes starts with MP, those things. That's the large Masorah. In other words, there's another book that has these numbers associated with these various numbers, which will then give you a tell you where a particular thing involved is located in the Hebrew Bible. Okay? It's kind of like a concordance of sorts. Okay? That's what it amounts to there. Okay? And we could learn how to read some of that. Some of that, we don't have a large Masorah around. In fact, it's a rather massive tome anyway. We can work with a small Masorah, large Masorah. We don't have copies of that. That is, scholars do and big libraries do. But,
so if I get one, will I be a scholar?
You will be, yeah. And really, I don't think you really need that for doing our exegetical work. But sometimes it's very helpful sometimes to see a few things that occur in there, because sometimes there'll be a little note that says this word occurs twice in the Hebrew Bible. And you look down on the Masorah and it may give you a second passage. It doesn't do that on a regular basis, but if it did, it would be helpful. So, okay, so we're not worried about that. The Masorah, we're not worried about that anymore. Marginal. We know about the Ketib Kareri, right? And we know how to spot those, the cough and above the cough, because the second reading, or the one that they're thinking is the correct one. Okay. Now they won't be pointed, so you gotta, that vowel won't be there. We can pretty much adjust to see that. But whenever you find one of those, it's also going to be in the bottom textual apparatus. There's going to be more data there here in our Bible. Now we'll learn how to read. Okay. All right. Let's see. We don't need to worry about some of those others. The numbers. This book will tell us, in fact, on the very back of the book, will tell you what some of those symbols are going to be from the standpoint of number. Because some of the things that we see are just telling us how many times such and such occurs. Okay, there have to be numbers there. And you notice the numbers have these letters, the dots over the dot over the top of them. Right? That kind of indicator. It's in front of our book too, and I'll point that out. Okay. Now he talks about, I'm not going to read all of this right now, but the VHS critical apparatus, chapter 4, explain critical apparatus. And we're going to work and figure out how to work that with all those little stuff means. Just notice that it says, though, on page 19, value judgments and text criticism. Okay? In other words, something you have to think through yourself in some ways. Okay? And then half of this stuff is in Latin. Now that's where we go to the back of the book. An English key to the Latin symbolism there. Okay? So that's what we need to know how to use. Okay? So that we can figure out what in the world that's talking about. Okay? Right. Okay. And the accents, you know all about the accents, I suspect, when you got your Bible. When you bought your Bible, you had the little two bookmark things. Yeah, right. Don't throw them away. Okay. Some of them are used for the Psalms, 3 books, and the rest of them are used. The other side is used. There's some minor differences actually too. Okay. So the accents, we won't use all those accents right now. We're not going to. Well, actually, we would do more with that when we get into working with poetry. Okay, and the accent becomes much more important in that regard. Okay. Then we have all of these symbols here. This is number 6. Index of symbols and abbreviations of the small Masorah, which is that in the margin. Margins there, okay? You see these symbols, which are Hebrew letters, right? Sometimes one letter, sometimes combination of letters. Well, that's where we need to be able to figure this, go to those and see what those symbols mean. We'll work on that, okay? And that's really the guts of what we need to be doing here, is working with these symbols and with these phrases. Okay? That's what we need to do. And that's what we begin to do in root. Now there's one more other important thing to say before we start in working these out all together. Let's find the book of Ruth first, okay? And we have the book of Ruth in there.
1320.
Huh?
Page 1320.
1320, yeah, there it is, okay? Find the book of Ruth, okay? Our analysis of textual criticism says if the Hebrew manuscripts and all the versions agree, we just keep the text. It's not going to be a problem there. We know this is what we want to worry about, right? Okay. It also says that we give precedence to the Hebrew manuscripts, right? If there's a textual problem, okay, but the Hebrew manuscripts all agree, right? That immeasurably helps us out, okay? Because we really, the only thing we need to do at that point is ask ourselves, is the Hebrew manuscript, does the Hebrew text make any sense here? Okay? Right? If it makes sense, even though there may be a variation in the Septuagint or something else down there, okay, we're going to 9 times out of 10, right, or maybe 90 times out of 100, go with the text. Okay? So the textual problems we really need to concern ourselves about, in other words, really work out in detail, are those textual problems where it shows that the Hebrew manuscripts differ from what's in the text. How do you know that? Well, let's just look at Ruth, for instance. I'm not Ruth right here, so we'll all be on the same page. I don't know if that's as sharp as it gets. I don't know. Check that. That's not as sharp as it gets. Okay. So let me note here for you, just looking at yours. You can't read this, I'll work up here. See, this first problem, the first problem that's notes, chapter 1, and we'll talk about the double A's or B's, or whatever that is there in a minute. But you'll notice there's a sign here that's going to be a sign for the Septuagint, okay? And these then other, they're suggesting, we'll read this later on, but they're suggesting that what the Septuagint is saying seems to be based upon these Hebrew words here. Okay, we won't get into that. But I'll notice the second problem says Septuagint has a different reading. The third problem here, Septuagint and the Vulgate reads as Q. We'll talk about that. There's a query there. Let me go down. Let me get down to the next page here. On the bottom, next page. Now notice this page. Here, I'll interpret this one for you, but it says reading. The L means reading. That's Latin abbreviation for reading. The C is going to be with. But then MLT, that's Latin for many. MSS, when it says MSS or MS, we're talking Hebrew manuscripts now. Okay? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Hebrew manuscript. I have to pay attention to this one in particular because there's variation within the Hebrew manuscripts. Okay? The second one here, there isn't a variation on that. The third one here, there isn't. This one here, there is. Right? There's the variation there. Okay? There's not a variation here. There is a variation here in the Hebrew tradition. Okay? There, let's see. And there's none there. There's none there. There's none. We'll look at all of these, but when it comes down to the nitty-gritty stuff, like these other ones, you ask the question, that's the Septuagint version and not the complete, because there's a particular text of that. But is the Hebrew text makes sense. The Hebrew text makes sense. The probabilities are we're not going to change the text because we give preference to that. We just want to know sometimes what in the world the Septuagint is doing, because there's a different interpretation that's given somewhere along the line. It may be based upon a misunderstanding of a word, or it may be based upon a different meaning of a word that Hebrew can have more than one senses to it, those kind of issues, okay? So sometimes it's good to look at that. But in particular, where it has manuscripts, the various manuscripts, Hebrew manuscripts differ. That's where you need to really look at it much more carefully. Okay? Okay, so that's kind of in the general. Now, if you were to look at this for a second. Of this page, then, just this page right here. How many of these textual problems? How many I really want to look at in some detail. Well, I got 1, 2, 3. 3 out of how many there are? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, 3 out of 8. Let's see what this next page does for me here. Where is it? Okay. Here's 1 I'll look at. Okay, there's 1 there, there's 1 here. There's the manuscript. This is the one that has 1 S. It's 1 manuscript difference. Okay. And this one doesn't have a Hebrew manuscript involved. So there's at least, this is only one, there's a few manuscripts here, and 1 manuscript involved here. So I'll look at those 2 particularly on that page. And this one here, what do I got? Well, I got 1 here that I'll look at, 1 here that needs to be looked at, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. This page got problematic. That one was the best. One got a few. We've got some manuscripts. This whole page here has got an awful lot of stuff to work on. Okay. Alright. Sometimes you have a page that just has a whole bunch of stuff that you don't have to really work on very much. Here, no, yes, no, yes, no. That's to say I'm not going to do anything with them. I'm just going to take note of what they are and basically ask the text, does it make sense? If it does, that's probably not going to make better sense. Okay. Here's the end of the texture right there. Oh, there it is. So this is a book. So these are here. So we've got 1 here to work on particularly, and 1 here. That's it. Okay. Specifically. Okay. The number of verses which are in this book, is okay. Let's see. This is the numbers: the sonic with the dot and the hay with the dot. We can start on that. Sonic with the dot is 6, and hay with the dot is 5. So it's 65. 65. Okay, so that's just kind of the general overview. Now let's look at, let's work some of this out and learn how to translate the thing we begin with. Okay? We'll have to look at your text because this gets a little fuzzy here. Came out. Let's look at the first one and just make sure we can read what it says and what it means. Look at the very first problem, which begins with chapter 1, verse 1, and there's a little a, and there's 2 a's, right? So what it's saying is between the 2 a's. So I've got on the very first line, starts with in the days of the judging by the judges, right? So I've got b'mei shafot, right? Those 2 words, between those 2 words is what the issue is involved here. Okay? Involves these 2 words. That particular sign that information, some of the information that's in this little booklet is also in the front of your Bible. But the problem with that, of course, is that a lot of times it's in Latin, right? And so that's why we use the booklet. But anyway, that particular sign, let me just show you where that is. So if you ever don't have your little book and you're at church and you're bored with sermon, you need to do a text of critical work. That sign, you go to page, well, let's see, that would be page XLV. XLV. And it uses these German letters, which in my mind is crazy. Okay? Because so many of them are so look alike. But on page XLV, which would be 45, if you were a Roman. Okay? You have this here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down, which gives you this symbol right here. Okay? You see that on page 45?
Must be different.
Yeah.
Huh?
I think our page numbers are different.
Is that right?
Yeah, it doesn't.
I don't think so.
This is 45.
Oh, 45. Let's see. Yes.
Oh, it's on
XLV3.
48.
Well,
Ours is an expanded version, I guess.
yeah, must be. Anyway, this sign here, right here, you see this sign, little symbol there. Version LXX, interpretation, Greek interpretation, right? Septuagint. That's what that particular sign there is, Septuagint. Okay, so we know that the Septuagint reading, which is what? What is the Septuagint? It's a Greek Old Testament, right? Okay, it's a Septuagint reading. And it has a little star by it.
Texas.
What in the world is a little star?
That's the original version.
Okay, yeah.
Texas. Gracious.
Greek,
Originalis.
it's Latin, it's the Greek one. Let's see, those symbols are also in this book here. I'm trying to find out where they are. Some other places there's some symbols. Names. Let's see. There it is, the very end, very back. Signs and versions. So you got that symbol there, that strange looking letter, that's the Septuagint. See, K, the Cathedral, L, the Landgraf Codex of the Hebrew Old Testament, which is basically our Bible there. M, that strange little M, the Masoretic text of the Old Testament. So NS and MSS, one or several medieval manuscripts of the Hebrew Old Testament, one meaning one S and more than one meaning two S's, etc. Okay, now you see the Curie, which is a Q, but there's a German Q down there. Okay, and that's a Qumran reading manuscript. Okay, so that's kind of weird. So anyway, and that V, this strange looking V, is the Vulgate, Old Testament Latin. So that's where these symbols are. Okay, so what we've got here then is Septuagint reading, okay, that reads in the, and this is infinitive for judging, okay, and that would be in Greek, and you're not, you had Greek, you had Greek, though. So if you don't know it, then, what can you say? You can just depend upon him, yeah, that's it. But that would be in a infinitive temporal clause. So it's essentially saying somewhat the same thing, but it says it seems to be equal to a bait plus shafat there, right? Okay, so it's They eliminated the days at that point. Okay? So they just essentially saying when the judges were judging. Not in the days of the judging by the judges. Okay? That's what they're saying. Well, does the Hebrew text make sense in that regard? Yeah, it makes sense. Okay? And in fact, it says the same thing, it just has a little more detail with the word days in there. Now we've got here, just to finish this out, this little S symbol. What is that? That S symbol is the Syriac version of the Old Testament. And what does OM mean? Just a guess. What do you think?
Omitted.
Huh?
Omitted.
Omitted. That's pretty common. But in the O category, in the O section, it says omit. Okay, it omits the Shaphat there. Okay, Syriac omits the Shaphat. So, not sure how the Syriac is going to read that. But frankly, at this stage, it's not going to change my text. And I'm not going to go any further on that problem. Okay? Right? How about the second one? What is that saying here? With a B. Well, with the B, we're still in verse 1 there, but there's a second problem in verse 1. B, where is it? It's the next to last word. Shnei Benai. So, two of his sons, right? It says two of his sons. Well, the Septuagint there, it's talking about the Septuagint there, and the Syriac there omit two to simply say his sons. They're omitting that. Okay? Well, did Hebrew make any sense? Yeah, it makes sense. Two of his sons. In fact, the whole context gives them names, so we'll just not worry about that one. In verse 8, now so this isn't too bad, is it? There was two problems in verse 1, but now we're down to verse 8 before the next one shows up. It's not bad, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah, sure. Let me show you, before we move on there, let me show you one other, the stuff on the side, just for your interest. Every time there's a little circle. A little circle on top of the letters. There's a lot of them. You ever see that little circle there?
Mm-hmm.
How many circles are there on that first line?
4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Starting from the right, over here, starting from the right, and a period separates the readings. So there's 1, there's 2, 3, 4, 5. Start here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? Okay, so each one of those dots associates itself with one of these readings over there. Just so that you know how to read those. You see what I'm saying, Kim?
Yeah. I
Okay.
just have 6 little dots in my first line. So.
The circles?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you got 6 circles, you got a corrupt text. No, I'm just kidding. You can't have 6. Does she have 6?
I recounted and recounted.
We have 6.
What?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you have.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, well maybe I miscounted. I don't know. Did I miscount?
Yeah. There's 6 on the board.
There's 6 on the board, too.
Yeah, I got 6. Yeah, I got 6. Service rate.
It
I
really
thought
is.
something was wrong.
Okay. Now let's look at the first one, just so you know how to read these things. Okay, so this first one on the right hand side, what I got is a hey, a dot over it, and a number 1. What does that mean? Okay, that's the question. What does that mean? In this section,
Which section?
number 7, transliteration. Oh no, that's transliteration. Excuse me, that's the wrong section. The section that begins with 6 symbol abbreviations. Okay, I'm looking for a hey, the hey. Hey with a dot over it. yod as number 15. Okay, that's the hey or the letter with the dot over is a number. Okay, so in fact we could use the 5, couldn't we? Okay, 5, and then it has a little 1. The little 1 that goes there goes to the bottom of the page
with the
large Masorah down there. See that? Right, it goes right over here. Okay, and on that page or number 91, it'll give you some more information on that particular the combination of words. That's in the middle of the 2 words that occurs. That means it's dealing with the combination of the 2 words. So in the day, and happened in days. Okay. And then the word judge. Now we've got a bait with a dot over it. That's a number. That's a number 2. Okay. Then we've got a dollar and a hate and a dollet. Okay. Hate and a dollet. And that's on page 38. And that comes from the Hebrew, actually it's Aramaic, but from the Hebrew word for 1. And it means 1 or once. Okay? So, twice, something occurs twice. Once.
Wait.
What do you say?
We're on a different page. Hate and dollar?
Yeah.
Page 40?
Page 38. Oh, we got a different set? We don't have a different book, do we?
It's not harder.
It looks the same.
Page 40.
Yes, you got different text there. What year is it?
1937. No, 87. What's that?
95. See, 3rd edition.
Oh, shoot. Second edition, 19.
Get with the future here.
Yeah, I know you with it. Anyway, it's the same information. If you look at the hate and the dollar.
Once,
right. Okay, 1 or once. Okay, so what that sign is saying is, to begin with, we haven't got the whole thing yet, you're more prepared. It says 2 times, written 2 times, once, then the main and the lamed. What is that? Main and lamed. That's on page 43 in the corrected version, 1927. Okay. See that? Fully written. Complete.
usually refers to
presence of God, which means the whole of God, or holy is the whole, right? I'm saying? So it says written that this thing occurs twice, one time written fully, and one time then it got a Kate sonic. So what is that?
Effectively written?
There it is. Defectively written. Okay, see, sound my case right. Defectively, which means whole and without a rod. See, one means whole, one means that's what it means. Okay. So this little symbol says that when that particular word shafot, it says twice. You find it twice. Once written fully and once written defectively. Okay.
Does that mean in this book? Or in the...
It's usually talking about the whole Old Testament. Okay. Okay.
I think that's a word that we use for.
Yeah. Shafat would be... Seems like
Shafat occurs a lot, but does this particular form occur that often? That's the question, I guess. Okay? So that's how you read that. That's how you read that stuff, and you have to just kind of work it out. Okay? So sometimes it's important and interesting to work out, and other times it's just time. I don't need to do it. Okay? I just want you to know how to do it. Okay? So let's go back down to the bottom down here. Let's work. Let's see. We're not going to change the text here. We're not going to change the text here. We're not going to. As Q 8, we get down to 8, verse 8, and it says the Septuagint and the Vulgate. That's what those two symbols are. With the A, let's see. What is the word? The word is. What word is it working on? The Yasa. So in that case. And you notice that the Cathedral Corée reading is what that is. You see the little dot or the circle. In this case, out in the margin, you see the Ka, and above the Ka, there. Well, when that occurs, it's also down in the bottom. Okay? And so when it says down there, is that the Septuagint and the Vulgate, ut, well, that is the word for as in Latin, as Q, right? Mm-hmm. Q means the marginal reading. Right.
Oh, how do you know it's not talking about the Corée?
The Cathedral,
No, this
is it? What is it?
In the back of this book,
Yeah.
Q stands for the Corée. Does that mean the
Correct.
That's what we're talking about, right?
That you're supposed to read the Corée, the margin in this case.
Mm-hmm.
Cathedral is what's written. Corée is what's to be read.
Right.
Right. So what this is saying is these two versions, the Septuagint and the Vulgate, read it as Q or as a Corée, or in this case, simply as an imperfect, third masculine singular here, right? Okay. And then it gives you the variation, and only the variation with the vowels that are necessary for the accurate interpretation of what that meant is what's given. And that's what, so they give you the two paths down there. Okay? Now, are we going to change the text? Well, in a sense, yeah. We're probably going to say, not just based upon the Vulgate and the Septuagint, but based upon the fact that the Hebrews themselves said there's a mistake here, we're reading as other, right? So I'm going to give some credit to that. I'm not always going to agree with it, maybe, but I'm going to give credit to that, and I'm going to look at that and say, well, what is the issue? Well, the issue apparently has to do with the spelling of this particular word here, right? And so it's really not a meaning change anyway. It's a spelling change. That's the issue here. Right.
Why would they add an extra K?
Sometimes it's a vowel letter. Sometimes, I'm not sure why they would add it. Okay, so, yeah, I'm probably going to go with the Corée on this one. Okay. Over here, to verse 14, the Septuagint adds something. That's what the Septuagint is adding. And she turned back to her people, that says in Greek. Okay, that's what the Septuagint is adding. And then this FRT. Well, what is FRT? Let's see what that means. Fortase. That's what that means. Which in English means perhaps. Okay. Huh?
They help us understand what it means by giving it another word for something we don't know.
Well, that's the abbreviation for the Latin fortase, which means in English perhaps. That's the way the translation would be. But then the L, that's a pretty common. You see it all the time, so you only have to look it up once probably. L, it stands for reading or to be read, right?
Read to read.
Read, that's what they're reading. They're reading something else. Okay, and so they're reading this, they're probably reading then, perhaps reading this as opposed to what's in the text. And you could translate that. That's just a guess as to how they got this. This is translating backwards. They get this Greek and say, well, what would be the Hebrew underlying that they're adding here? And they say, well, perhaps it's this. Right? Okay. And she returned this, and this means, and she returned to her people. And she returned back to her people. Right? That's what that says. Okay? But the bottom line is the text makes sense, and we wouldn't add anything to it. Okay? It's probably there in this case there's probably a feeling somewhere along the line that in verse 14 there needs to be something more said. Okay? That's probably what's going on because it's at 14a. Where is it? It's in the middle of the verse, right? Yeah. And it talks about Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, and Ruth clung to her. But then, so they're adding the historical note apparently, and so she kissed her mother-in-law and went home. Right? And Ruth did. Okay, so we wouldn't change the text on that basis. Okay. All right. Let's find one where there's a change. Here's one there's a change, chapter 1, verse 19. Number A having to do with what? Oh, there. The second word in Okay, that's the word there. Okay, so, and it says the L meaning what? Read. The C meaning what? With. Okay. With. The MLT meaning what? A number of, okay, right. Okay, so, let me see. MLT meaning many, and then we're going to find PC. This is another very common one, which means few. PC means a few. Okay, those are pretty common things that we're going to see. So anyway, reading with many manuscripts, hen. Now the thing we've got to ask ourselves is this. The Hebrew manuscripts are those that are varying at this point. The versions aren't varying. We're not worried about the versions at this point. What is the difference first in the meaning of this? Okay, both of them, what? And verse 19 says what? And both of them went unto, or came unto, until they came to the house of Bethlehem, basically. Okay? And they went, both of them, until they came to Bethlehem. Right? That's what that said. Now the difference is between stay hem and stay hen. What is the difference in those two endings? The one is masculine plural and the other one is feminine plural. Right? So you have to ask the question, which one of these readings would have given rise to the alternative? There's two options here. Okay. If originally it said that both of them women, okay, was there, would anybody ever suggest, well, let's make them both of them and make it masculine ending? Right? Probably not. If the masculine ending was there, would anybody have suggested maybe we ought to change the feminine, especially in light of the fact that the verb that precedes it is a feminine ending? Right? Okay. So the probabilities in this case are the hardest reading, and one that gives rise to the alternative would be the one in the text, right? But then you have to do something else at this point in our interpretation of the text, not just the textual issue, but the interpretation. That is, how come we got masculine ending associating itself with women here? Clearly about women. So you have to go to the grammars to see if in fact we got some justification for keeping the text as it is. Right? And that's the next stage in this particular problem. Okay? But from the standpoint of the manuscript evidence, of our key rules, canons of interpretation, we would keep the text at that point. Okay?
Now, in a situation like this, I guess the grammar would be our best bet to figure out why it would be masculine ever. Why anyone would ever make it masculine, right?
Well, masculine gender is really a common gender referring to, so it's very, it's not un-Hebrew to be able to use a masculine ending and you're referring to women. You do it when you refer to men and women, and sometimes simply it occurs when you're referring to women without distinguishing that thing, right? The other way would not work. In other words, the feminine ending could not refer to men and women, and therefore there would be a real issue at that point. Right? Grammatically, I'm talking about. Okay. So, but you have to check it out in the main grammar. The large grammar, Exegesis, couch, cow. Check that out. At any rate, bottom line is our canon interpretation says keep the text. Right? Okay. There's a little dot over it as well, and if you look over to the margin, that would be the first dot on that line, so it says bait, and it says what? Well, it says this form, this combination of words, noun and pronoun occurs 2 times. Okay? And then you go down to the line number or number 3667, find where the other time is. They didn't help us out on that one, did they?
They did on 19 though?
They did on 19, they did. 19, Proverbs 18:18. It'd be nice if they did that more often. Yeah. Okay, so we've got that one. Now here, what is that sign? We got a B on, still on verse 19, we got B's. The words between the B's, the 2 B's. That one of the first line by he, and then over to Lechem. Okay? And it happened when they came to the Bethlehem. Okay? That's what that says. Now between those, what is that symbol with the carrot going to the right? That's the question you asked. What does the symbol mean? On page 84 in my version. Very end of the book, signs and versions. He's wanting in, or meaning he is absent in. What it says is that phrase is absent in the Septuagint. Septuagint does not have that phrase. Would I think about changing the text by just taking my eraser and wiping those words out? No. Okay. And it makes sense. It's really not going to change it on that basis, and that's probably more likely a scribal error in the Septuagint than anything else. More likely. Scribal error. Okay? And it could well be that they missed that. How could they possibly miss that? Look at the first line. They were reading and they're translating. The first part of 19 says, and both of them until they came to the Bethlehem, right? Okay, the very end of the problem we got is what? Bethlehem. That's an ice skip problem, probably. And so they just kind of saw Bethlehem and then continued forward, and all of a sudden they missed that. So that's an unintentional error, most likely in the Septuagint. Okay, that's right. Okay, that's that problem. This problem here, this is number C in the same verse. C, okay, that's with Alehem there. Okay, and this reading says the Septuagint, down here, I can see it there, that has the B out of Septuagint. What does that mean?
It means, let's look at here.
Little B.
It means codex. Wait, is that what you're talking about?
Huh?
Yeah.
We got the Septuagint sign and then a little B.
Vatican, so it's the Vatican copy.
Right. what I've got, in other words, those are different versions of the Septuagint. Okay. Now, what I notice in my signs and versions list is I got the signs of the Septuagint, but I don't have all the breakdowns. I've got a couple of breakdowns that might smack us there, but that's not going to show up for the Septuagint sign anyway. But it doesn't give you all of those. So our old, that is the front of our Old Testament is where you have to do that. You need to do that. Okay. I don't need to know why you would need to do that. Okay. And then we have A and Q. One would be probably Aquila at that point, the Septuagint, but Aquila, which would be a later one. Okay? And the variation here, this is simply says, it reads at that point upon, not upon, because on our text it reads upon them. Okay? Over them, probably, in the sense that all the city, went into an uproar, so to speak, over them. Okay, well, the Septuagint reading says what? Over her. I was thinking of Naomi at that point. And the only difference in this other Septuagint here is a different case for the word her. To her. Respective words didn't have a preposition. But it's reading ha being the singular her pronoun at the end of that. So it's reading a different thing. Would I change the text? Well, no, I don't think I'd change the text. It makes good sense. There is excited about Naomi and Ruth, not just Naomi, right? So that's what that is. Okay, so we would not change the text at that point, but at least we understand what's being said. In verse 20, reading with many manuscripts. Oh, Marah, now we need to look at that one. 20. Number of manuscripts read something different. There's there it is at the end of the line. The difference is between Marah with an aleph and a Marah with a hey. Right? It's a difference. It's a difference. This is interesting because it's a difference in spelling. But it's not a difference in sound. Right? The question at this point would be, what is the correct spelling for the word bitter, Mara? You see. So you look up in BDB to see if in fact there's a variation. It shows a variation with an aleph, which is a sign for an A-class vowel, right? As opposed to a K. And so the probabilities are what we've got here in these various manuscripts are the same word, meaning bitter. Okay? But there's no difference in meaning, and it's probably a mistake of hearing at this point. Okay? But we would have to check that out simply to see if there's another word, Mara, with an aleph that in fact means something other. Okay? You could also read over in the margin, that is the left-hand margin, let's see, that would be this third little dot section. So 1, 2, 3, that would be the last part. Okay. And it says this, with a lamed with a dot over it, right? Lamed with a dot over it is, one means one, but where is it at? It's not on here. Oh, there should be a footnote there. The lamed with a dot over it means just,
It's on
30.
Where is it at here?
The second column.
Lamed. Okay. 3. Talking about 3 times 10 thirds. Actually, the lamed, find it here. Notice on page 41 of my version. How many numbers are we up here? I'm on 43. You on 43 or 39?
42.
42. It was the lamed with a dot. See that one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's a difference. It could be a different spelling. There is no other. Okay? This word combination of words does not occur except in this place. It has the effective meaning of once or unique. Most of the time when you see that, that's what it means. So what this is saying, and our problem here, which is what problem? Verse number 20. Verse number 20. Okay, is one time is written, once it's written, or unique as written with an R. So there's a spelling problem here, issue primarily here. Okay. So would I change the text? Not since there's no different meaning, right? I might, in fact, if in fact I look at my lexicon as I was working with it, and I found that this was not in the lexicon, the other word was not in the lexicon, and it's a spelling issue. I'm going to go ahead and put this word in it, in my textual analysis, right? And then I'm going to make a note as to why I changed it. And my conclusion on the textual critical side. It's just a little note, right? That's all I'm going to say. Just summarize what I did. But that's what's going on in that particular one. Okay, so probably will. I'll probably take this and move that into the text. Verse 21, the Septuagint, the Syriac, and the Vulgate are reading something. He humbled me, or something. Or it's AA between A's. And verse 21. Oh, there it is. Okay, so Ana B there. Ana B. Okay. And Yahweh humbled me. Right, that's what it says, and that's what they read. That's what they're reading. It essentially says the same thing, and of course it could be translated a different way. Take on it could be afflicted me. Okay, it's humble. Actually, afflicted is a little more, probably a little more in keeping with Naomi's attitude at that point than just kind of put me down a little bit. No, he whacked me. Is what he did. Okay, so in that case, I would certainly keep the text. I certainly wouldn't change it to the Septuagint reading at that point. Chapter 2, many manuscripts read, many manuscripts as Q. Okay, 2, 1. The Q there says Modah, as opposed to, you notice you can't even pronounce the word that's there in the text. Mm-hmm. Name with a yod on top of it there. So what they're saying is that it needs to be written with a yod for the parsec. Okay. Right. That's what that's saying. So many manuscripts read that. The Kativ, though, they repointed it. See the same. If you want to see what's written in there, the repointing of it. Okay, now the repointing of it turned it into a PL. Okay, parsec. So what you've got in the original, in the Q let's see. That's a PL there, so that would be Modah. Maybe that's, I'd have to look that one up, see what it's reading there, and check the grammar on that. That's that's probably a Hitler parsec. Probably. Okay. Anyway, the bottom line is the difference between whatever that form is, probably the Hitler, as opposed to the Puel. I want to see if there's any difference in meaning. Okay. But many manuscripts have changed it. My guesswork is that I'm going to go with the many manuscripts. Not only that, I'm certainly going to change the text, because you can't read the text as it stands. Okay? So that one's going to change. In verse number 6, the Syriac adds something, omits something in verse 6, chapter 2. Between the two A's, what did they decide? They didn't like what God said. And the young woman stationed herself by the reapers. Okay, so for some reason the Syriac decided to admit that. I'm not sure why. It could be an I-skip problem. Notice how it begins. The word right before where it starts is ha-na-ar. At the very end of our phrase, after Viomer, is na-ara. They could easily have kind of skipped over that somehow. But the bottom line is that's not going to change my text. Okay. That's what it's saying. 7a. How to read that one? 7, number A is. Where am I at here? Where? That one. 7a, yeah. Ata. Okay, that's what's reading. Septuagint reads. Hesperos, which has to do with evening, and equal to air, meaning evening. So until now. Well, okay, so what they're saying is morning until evening instead of until now, right? Well, does it even make sense? Well, yeah, that makes sense, right? Okay, if they had written from then the morning until the evening, when any scribe thought, let's change that. Let's make it until now. No, because morning and evening is a pretty common Hebrew concept, right? Very often. So you wouldn't change that. That would not be a change at all. It makes good sense. Okay. By the way, just another issue, just an awareness issue here. Sometimes when this kind of thing occurs, this equals this. Okay, it's very clear that evening and now are different words in both languages, Greek, Hebrew, English, whatever, right? In all these languages. Where did they get the idea to put era? In other words, did they have a manuscript that they were copying from that had the word era in it? We don't know. See, we don't know. That's one of the weaknesses of this whole textual thing in this apparatus. We don't know. We don't know. That word there equals this word here. Did they just take a stab at it, or were there a manuscript that read? We don't know. So we can't do much with it other than evaluate the text that we have. Okay? And over here, what do we got? We got between B and B, we've got the Septuagint, which reads something different there, which seems to be representative of what this is over here. So let's see what B and B is. Little hut. Sit here in this little house. Take it easy from this little hut in the field. And so the Septuagint reads, you, it's a Sue sitting there. No, it's not. Not, okay, yeah, not sit. Don't sit down in the field equals, yeah, so they changed the text. It should not sit down in the field, right? As opposed to what is the text saying, now this sits here in this little hut in the field. So it's a little different. We're going to change the text based on the Septuagint alone. No, it's probably clarifying the text, clarifying the meaning. The question I have to ask then on my criteria is, does the Hebrew make sense or is it completely nonsense? You see? Does it make sense? Well, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So I probably won't change the text on that basis. Okay. I'm not doing too bad here. Notice this. Half of the book in verses. Exact half of the book. And not only that, there's an interesting thing if you've ever studied Ruth, and that is that very point is where the whole book changes. The whole story changed. The attitude of Naomi changes. Changed from the negative view up to that point until it was now she has this positive view going on the rest of the way. Right at that very point. Very interesting.
Mathematical almost.
Yeah. Well, you see, they counted all this up and they got to have a verse.
And then the person writing too.
Yeah. Okay, so that's that. So let's see, verse 16. Verse 16. What is this? Omitted in the second. Verse 16 is wanting in the Syriac. In other words, they decided, let's just wipe it over. No, they probably just had a eye-skip problem or something like that and just missed the whole verse. The Syriac. But I'm not worried about what the Syriac says. Does verse 16 make any sense in the Hebrew? Yes, therefore we won't change it. Right? Verse 18 is a problem here, and a few manuscripts and the Syriac and the Vulgate are reading something else. So we want to see what the readings are. Verse 18, number A. 18a. So the question wants to say, okay. She saw, her mother-in-law and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned, And so the issue is with the word vatera. And the change that they've seen here is, I lost my spot here. Oh, there it is. It's change in spelling. Right there. Vatara. Vatara as opposed to, where's that?
Vatera.
Vatera. The question that we have to simply ask at this point is this the same word? Is it a different word? Is it a variation in the spelling? What is it? See what I'm saying? It means she saw, but there's also, and these words are always frustrating, that is ra'ah, is a difficult word, all three letters are problematic. But then yara is another word with a yodin from it that very often ends up with the same consonants as ra'ah, with different vowels. You gotta check that out. Of course, it means to fear, so she's not afraid of what she gleaned, so it's probably clearly, contextually, that she saw what she had gleaned. And what these manuscripts down here are doing are probably changing. They're not changing the consonants. They're changing the vowels. Right? It's just a vowel issue here. And that's what they're doing down there. And so when we check that out, just to check out the proper spelling, we might well change that ourselves. Right? It's a real possibility there. The proper spelling is in this manuscripts. Down here are a few manuscripts. Or we might find out that there is a possibility that both spellings could be correct. And what's the difference between the two? It would be the same word, but maybe a difference between, well, it wouldn't be a difference between a preterite and a jussive now the Rob's secular. So probabilities are it doesn't change the meaning at all. But it may change stuff. Year 19, we got the Septuagint reading something else, and you can compare the Syriac if you really have a mind to do that. In other words, learn the Syriac first, then go find the manuscript. And then, I'm going to do that tomorrow. Okay, so they're reading something else in there. Septuagint's reading something else between 19a and a. All we need to do at this point is ask ourselves the question, is the Hebrew making sense? Where is it? Oh, there it is, And so that reads simply, she took to her mother and she told her mother-in-law what she had done with him. And what the Septuagint is reading is where she did it. Okay, so who means typically where it says, right? Where she did, where she worked. So there may be some reason that they wanted to take away the idea that she had some sort of a relationship of whatever kind, so that to eliminate the imagination to go to work, maybe they just simply change it to what she was doing as opposed to with whom she was doing it. So it could be, we wouldn't change the text on that basis, but we may be able to explain on the basis of just sensitivities why they may get changed. Verse 20, a manuscript, 1S, a manuscript reads something different. Syriac, it's halfway over there, 20 verse A, number A, 20 verse 20.
There's a couple of preposition markings.
Where is it? Lost it there. 20. Let me say everything there. Oh, there it is. SQR to Yahweh. Now what it is? Oh, they just eliminated the line. Which would mean a different thing. It says, blessed are, blessed you are to, if you will, she is to you, to the Lord, as opposed to blessed is the Lord. So there's a little difference to me, but that's one manuscript in the Syriac. Whether I'm going to change anything, does the text make any difference? That makes sense. Yeah, so let's keep the text. 21. Septuagint in the Syriac adds something to her mother-in-law, which would apparently reflect this. And the Septuagint here, the Syriac of the Vulgate, look like they eliminated it. And how come Septuagint and the Syriac add this, and it's wanting in the Septuagint, Syriac, and the Vulgate? So there may be different versions. Okay. But I think this probably points out something that you find in Wretlind and maybe even here, that part that we didn't read, and that is sometimes the textual apparatus we find in VHS even though it's better than the old kibble. Okay, it still has some problems. That could be a reflection of that. Okay,
Could that semicolon mean?
Huh?
What would it look like if some versions just omitted the whole verse? Would they do it more like 16?
Yeah, probably like that. But what this might reflect.
I'm seeing that semicolon and I'm wondering if that.
Semicolon? Oh, here?
Yeah.
I think that's just simply separating the two, as far as I can tell, two readings. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that would be. But I'm not going to change the text. The text makes sense. So. Sometimes you just take the coward's route and say, does it really make any difference? No. Move on. Okay. We're doing pretty good here, aren't we?
I don't know.
How far are we along? This is chapter 2 still, or is it 3? Must be in 3 now.
Yeah, we started.
Okay. 3. Verse 23. Few manuscripts, Hebrew manuscripts, and the Vulgate are reading something different. 23. 23.
Right at the end there.
22. Oh, it must be 22 then.
No, 23 is really at the top of the verse.
It's the end of chapter
Yeah,
2.
it's the
Oh, yeah, right.
voluntary shadow and the 8.
23. Hey, I see one. Oh, there it is. Oh, okay.
Different vowels.
Sherry Turner, well, okay, so what do we got here? We've got, okay. They changed it. They changed the word. Okay, so the word Tashav El down there means she returned to her mother-in-law. Okay. And up here we've got and she lived or dwelt with her mother-in-law. Okay, so we have to look at the context at that point to see if the Hebrew makes adequate sense. Okay? If not, there's a few manuscripts that read this other, but the majority of the manuscripts will read the text as it stands, apparently. So, it probably makes good sense the way it stands.
And because the Septuagint isn't mentioned, that means it probably has a similar reading.
Yeah, well, if it's not mentioned, it's going to go along with the text.
Which adds maybe not as important, but more weight still.
Yeah,
It will.
that would be some of the manuscripts that are in support of the text. In other words, the New Testament textual criticism, you have a line that says, here's the supporting manuscripts, and here's the alternative manuscripts.
Yeah.
In this apparatus here, we don't have the supporting manuscripts given.
I'm just making sure.
See, that's what that is.
If they're not mentioned, they're supported.
Yeah. Right. And by the way, remember that chart, that article that talked about the Septuagint is good in here and bad in there? It doesn't mention Ruth at all, so probably goes along with the way Joshua is. Are we done?
Yeah.
Are you done with that?
No, I just have to change.
Let's take a little bit of a break and stretch.
Do you want to do the rest of this book tonight? Is that your goal?
That's my goal.
All right. That'd be nice to know that we went through